In this video, we're gonna do an audit of all the various screen sizes, right? The iPhone 12 Pro Max, the iPhone 8, the iPhone SE, the iPhone 8 Max, iPhone 12 mini, right? We're gonna run through the app on all those screen sizes and take a look and see if there's anything we need to fix. And after we do that, I'm going to give you my design philosophy that I've learned over time and experience on how to handle this situation. We'll get to that in a second, but I do want to tease that a little bit because, the first part of the video might be a little tedious. We're just going to quickly run through the app on all the different screen sizes, but this is a good exercise that you should be doing as you're building a feature or a screen to make sure things are good. And we'll talk about how you can interact with your designer if you're not the one designing the screen. So first, as you can see, I have the iPhone 12 Pro. We know that's good, right? That whole series of phones, like the iPhone 11, 11 Pro, 12, 12 Pro, that kind of like standard phone size, we know that's good. That's what we've been building on this whole time. So we don't have to check that. But let's check the iPhone 12 Pro Max. And it can be any of these Maxes, right? 11 Pro Max, 12 Pro Max. They're the same size, essentially. So we'll do the 12 Pro Max. And typically, the larger phones are not the issue. Usually it's the smaller phones that are the issue because you're trying to jam that UI into a smaller screen size. Again, the larger ones usually are no issue, but we're going to run through it just to check. Okay, here we are. There's our empty state in light mode. We're going to switch to, we'll keep this one in light mode. Why not? Okay, so I am not logged into the iPhone 12 Pro Max. That's why we saw our onboarding screen because I never used this simulator. So cool. Our onboard screen looks fine on the big phones. Swipe down to dismiss. Yep, we'll allow once. So now, again, we are also testing kind of by accident what it's like to use the app when you're not signed into iCloud because you want to make sure that is still a decent user experience. So cool, our location's showing up. Our map pins are showing up. Let's tap on Peggy Sue's. We checked in there. Cool, yep, we see we got a lot of space on the larger phone for our grid down here of faces. But overall, looks fine. Nothing looks crazy. Dismiss. And again, this is expected on the old, the bigger phones, right? Because they just have more room. So you're not going to have an issue here. We'll tap on Chipotle, see all of our faces. Good to go. Cool. Profile, no user record. That's fine. So we expect because we're not signed in. Profile looks fine. Again, the larger screen sizes, I did not expect any issues. One thing you always want to test, because this is always the culprit, especially on the smaller screens, is the keyboard. So tap the keyboard. It's not going to be an issue on the larger screen because we built it on the iPhone 12 and now we have more room. So it's definitely not going to be an issue. It's only an issue when you have less room. So yeah, plenty of room here with the keyboard. Dismiss it. So you always want to check that. So that quick run through, I would say our big phones, 12 Pro Max, 11 Pro Max, they're fine. Again, that was expected. Keeping with the bigger phones, let's go to the iPhone 8 Plus, right? This is the bigger phone, but we still have the chin, right? The top chin and the bottom chin. So let's go to the simulator. And when you're doing this, you're going to find you have a lot of simulators open. So I'm going to close the 12 Pro, close the 12 Pro Max. Where is my 8 Plus? Did I not run it? Run. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I closed the simulator too soon. Who knows? We'll see. Okay, here we are. And I had to sign in on that settings screen. So I guess I have signed into this iPhone 8 Plus simulator before. I don't remember doing that, but I guess I have. But we still saw our onboard screen, which is expected because we're saving that has seen onboard view in user defaults, which is specific to the device. And here I am on a new device, so that didn't have it in user defaults, so we saw that, even though I already had a user. And again, we talked about that when we did this. I think that's fine. I mean, it's a simple swipe down and you're done. No big deal. Okay, yep, allow once. Okay, map view is good. Our map view is probably always going to be good because it's just filling the whole screen. But double check it. Tap on Grace's Cafe. Cool. You see we have a lot less room down here though, even though this is a larger phone, because we have that top chin and the bottom chin. That really changes things. So, but it still looks fine. Let's see one with all of our faces. Go to Chipotle. There we go. So you see, but they're barely there, even on this larger phone. And we could optimize this a bit to shrink our It's Chipotle Enough Said, because we have that as a fixed height. Because if we go to something like, I can't even remember, Original Joe's. Yeah, that's a 3-1, right? So we basically made it so we can handle 3 lines, and we hard-coded that. And when we do dynamic type, that's going to be an issue. We'll come back to that. But overall, the app looks fine on this larger screen. And again, I didn't expect anything worse. So let's test the keyboard. Click on it. Command K if you're not getting your keyboard. Okay, cool. A little tight, but fine. So we'll see if this is an issue on the smaller phone. But again, larger phone works fine. Dismiss the keyboard. Cool. Okay. iPhone 8 Plus, good to go. We'll stop that. Now, let's get into the danger zone. We'll do the iPhone 12 mini. I'm not expecting the iPhone 12 mini to be that bad because we don't have to deal with the chins, right? I get a little nervous on like the regular iPhone 8 where we have the smaller phone and the chins to deal with. That's where I'm like, oh, I don't know how that's going to go. Let's get out of light mode. Let's go Command-Shift-A. Let's get to dark mode. Hit allow once. Cool. So I don't believe I'm checked in on this one. I guess we'll find out. It doesn't matter. But yep, again, the map screen is probably always going to look good because we're filling it up. Let's tap on Peggy Sue's. There we go. There's Sean's. Tap on that. That looks good. That's probably always going to look good because it's just centered in the screen. Dismiss that. So again, the only thing I think might be a little dangerous is, well, let's go to Chipotle. Okay, this bottom area is good. And like I said, I thought the iPhone 12 mini is good because we don't have the chins to deal with. So that's why it feels like we have more room. But everything's good here. Yep, cool. And back, let's go to Profile. No, okay, so I'm not signed in here. That's fine. Okay, let's test the keyboard because the profile screen itself looks fine. Test the keyboard. Again, Command-K if you don't see it. A little tight, but workable, right? So we're good here. Okay, so iPhone 12 mini, good to go. Now let's get to the little bit of the danger spot. We'll see here, iPhone 8. And by that way, the iPhone 8 and the iPhone SE second generation are the same like screen size. So we'll do the iPhone SE second generation. The iPhone SE first generation, which was like the old iPhone 5 screen size, which if you ever grab one now, it feels like a kid's toy in your hand. It feels so small, even though that was like a big phone for the time, right? Because it made it longer than the old iPhone 4 and the iPhone 3. So the iPhone SE original and the iPhone 5 used to be the bane of my existence, right? Trying to build apps for the iPhone X, the iPhone 8 Plus, and then also making that UI work on that little iPhone 5. I used to hate that screen size so much. Luckily with like iOS 14, iOS 15, it's no longer supporting that older iPhone 5, older iPhone SE. So if you are doing N-1, thankfully you don't really have to worry about that, kind of. I'll come back to that in a second. But if you are supporting older iOS versions, I'm sorry, it sucks, but yeah, you are gonna have to support that phone. We're not gonna cover that here because I have nightmares and I don't wanna go back to that life because it's brutal trying to get things to work on that phone. But anyway, iPhone SE second generation. Let's move on. I don't even wanna think about that. Okay, and again, close out some simulators here. iPhone 12 mini can go. Okay, so again, smaller phone with the chins. Let's see how this works. Okay, we see the onboarding screen. Looks like I haven't signed in here before. Should get the allow once. Cool. Our navigation's working. Hit allow once. Does this not support dark mode? Or I'm not in dark mode. So Command-Shift-A to dark mode. Okay. So yep, map screen as expected. Location list, fine. This is fine. I was worried about this horizontal space for avatars. Good to go. So click on Chipotle. Okay, you can see we have a little bit of optimization we can do. It looks like our padding is on the bottom is too much. We can have that go all the way to the bottom, but you see, still fine. And we're gonna talk about why I'm cool living with this stuff. Before I do that, let's actually go to the profile to like finish this out here. So the profile, no user record, cool. Now hit the keyboard. This is gonna be tight. This is gonna be tight. Command-K. Okay, it does cut off the button a little bit. It's still usable. It is a minor UI thing. And I'm going to talk about why I am fine like dealing with this, because you could come in and just for this iPhone screen size, you could make this profile square like a little smaller, maybe make the bio a little smaller, change the font size to be smaller, make the button thinner. You can tweak this to get rid of that. It's certainly possible. And then, you know, back to our location list screen, right? Maybe you could, on this screen size, make the banner a little thinner, you know, make this words a little smaller. Like you can do all these tweaks. It's possible. It's not an unsolvable problem. But here's why I am fine leaving little stuff in like this for this screen size. And this also depends on, you know, if you're an indie developer, small startup versus a huge app like YouTube. Two different worlds, two different answers. I'm going to address it from the indie developer, small startup type app where developer resources are insanely valuable and insanely limited. So I don't think spending your developer resources on making it look great on the iPhone SE, these older phones with the chins, which we all know are going away, right? They're going to die off. They're going away. So I don't want to spend my precious developer resources on this because let me show you something, and I'll link to this in the description as well. If you're not familiar with Mixpanel, it's a basically analytics service, but a lot of people use them. So they have a lot of data on like what phones are being used. So this is a great way. If you go to mixpanel.com/trends, and I'll link to it in the description, but look, you can see iPhone 12 adoption, iOS 14 adoption. If you're looking to make these decisions on like, we'll go to this, for example, like look, iOS 14 adoption is at 80%. Well, that's as of December 20th. Let's go to the past 30 days. iOS 14 adoption is at 91.77%. So when you're trying to make these decisions on when to drop OSs, you can come to this page and it'll give you useful information. So what we're going to do is go back to iPhone 12 adoption. This is the new phone, so you can see. And again, we already are in the last 90 days. So you can see we have the iPhone second gen here. is this blue line, and you can see iPhone 2nd gen is 4.32%. So my point is, well, actually, let's do this properly. So 4.32%, and let's actually go back. Let's do iPhone 8 and iPhone X adoption. Make sure you're on the last 30 days to get the most recent data. And then now, okay, look, we'll go here. So the iPhone 8 and the iPhone 7 are at 5.88, call it 6, and we'll just call it 6 and 6 for the iPhone 8 and 7. So 12% there and 4% for the iPhone SE, just to round out. So that's a total of 16% of users are on these older phones. Now back to Xcode in the simulator. Now 16% isn't incredibly small. However, that means 84% of your users aren't using these phones. And again, this is dying away. That number is only going to get smaller and smaller as these phones die out. So again, as you're thinking of how to spend your developer resources, part of you may be like, oh, I want to spend time to fix it on this iPhone SE. That's 16% of my users. It's fine. You got to make tough decisions sometimes. Sometimes you got to say, hey, that's 16% and shrinking. I should not spend my time on that. Again, if your developer resources are super scarce and, valuable. If you're an app like YouTube, 16% of their billion users is a very large number. Not to mention, they have the resources, the team, the developers to focus and make it look good on this screen size. So that's what I said. Those larger companies, completely different world, completely different answer than if you are an indie dev or at a small startup where maybe you're the only developer or maybe it's just 2 or 3 developers, right? You have to really focus and pay attention to how you spend those developer resources. And again, that was a little rant, but in my opinion, making things perfect on the dying iPhone SE and iPhone 8, I'm not too worried about. I think our developer resources and time can be spent way better elsewhere, whether that's new features or improving other things. I just think I would let this one slide. Again, for those little minor things, I want to be very clear. If the app is broke and doesn't work, of course, fix it. But small UI, things like this being small or our profile, right? The keyboard coming up a little too high, I'm gonna let that stuff slide. Okay, so let's dismiss the keyboard, go back to the locations, because now I'm gonna talk about my design philosophy. So you'll notice, we didn't really have to make any changes. Again, we could mess around with this iPhone SE, whatever. But that's not by accident. And I've learned a lot of this the hard way. And because I had the luxury of designing this app myself, I've dealt with all these screen sizes so much and the headache of it that now when I build a screen, I keep that in mind. Let's take this location detail screen, for example, because this was the toughest one, right? There's a lot of stuff going on. I needed a lot of vertical real estate. So this stuff didn't happen by accident, right? Look, there's a reason I chose the small navigation bar rather than like the big one, right? If I go to my location list, right? This big nav bar that's like the new modern one. Well, I chose on this one to go with the small one because I knew I was going to need screen real estate. There's a reason this banner image is as, thin or as skinny as it is. I needed the real estate. There's also a reason why our grid is at the bottom, because I knew I could make this a scroll view or which is flexible depending on how much space I have. So everything I did when I was designing this screen in my head was thinking, how am I going to deal with these smaller screen sizes? I need to maximize my vertical real estate and have the bottom of the screen be flexible so it doesn't look crazy if it's on a big phone or a small phone. So that's how I ended up with this screen. And there's also a reason why our map view is the whole screen. If I go to my original designs here in Sketch, you'll notice I had this card. I'll zoom in a little bit. I originally had the idea for like a card. Whichever one you tapped on, you would see this little card down here and you could see more. That was the original plan. Well, the reason I went away from that was because look, it's taking up vertical screen real estate, which is fine on the larger phones. But if I go back to Xcode with our simulator, you'll see. And imagine if there was a card here on the bottom. Now our map is only like the top 60% of the screen. It just looked too cramped. So again, I have the experience of dealing with all these screen sizes so much, and especially that iPhone 5, that's really what scarred me deep in my soul. It's like dealing with that. So now I have that experience. So when I design stuff, I'm thinking about this ahead of time. I'm basically handling the problems before they even occur. And then the last example, right? There's a reason our profile view, right? All this stuff is up towards the top, even on the larger screens. And that's because I knew the keyboard was going to come up and I knew I was going to have smaller screens to deal with. Now, of course, there's keyboard avoidance, moving views. Anybody that's dealt with keyboard avoidance knows it's a pain. It's just weird. I try to avoid even dealing with it if I don't have to, like moving the views up with the keyboard and all that stuff. So again, that's why I designed the profile screen the way that I did. So again, this is all thought out due to years of banging my head up against all these different screen sizes. So hopefully you can keep that in mind for your experience going forward, to always think about that when you're designing your screens. Now that's if you have the luxury of designing your own screens. Maybe you have a designer that you have to work with, And you know what sucks is that the vast majority of designers that I work with will design for the iPhone 12 screen, right? Let's actually run it on here so I have it up, right? The iPhone 12 Pro, they will design for this screen. They're gonna make it look beautiful. Well, as we've learned that this screen, if it ever pops up, is very long. You have a lot of vertical real estate to deal with. So when they build their designs, they'll make it look great on this, but they'll totally neglect the smaller phones. So what I would recommend as a designer, if you look at a screen and based on what we've talked about, what we know your experience, you're like, that's going to be rough on a smaller screen size. Go back to the designer, before you even start building and say, hey, designer, this looks great on this iPhone 12. How is it going to look on this screen size? And give them the dimensions and resolutions and, point that out to them. How do you want this to look on that screen? Because this current version ain't going to fit on that. So have those discussions up front. You'll really save yourself a lot of headaches. Now, if you really want to make yourself cry, I don't know what phone you have, but on the iPhone 12 Pro, iPhone 11, iPhone 12, whatever, go to settings, display and brightness, and then zoom mode. So that zooms the phone in to make things bigger. We're not going to handle that. That's a whole, again, you have to draw the line somewhere, but I want to point that out to you just to show you how deep this second 90%, all this display stuff can go. And we haven't even touched on dynamic type and accessibility yet. So again, I'm trying to paint the picture that this second 90% is a ton of work if you want to support, all the different screen sizes, zoom mode, not zoom mode, dynamic type. It is a hell of a lot of work. And like I said, time and time again, we can't cover it all. Course would be 1,000 videos long, probably cost $2,000. Nobody would take it. So, I got to draw the line somewhere for the millionth time. But I do want to show you that it does exist. And so this stuff is out there and you can prep yourself mentally for, again, when you think you're almost done, you got this whole huge second 90% to do.